anytime you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, you always come out better.
If you don't actually listen to your body, you're never going to win.
And I always tell myself, I'm like, I was the right person for this to happen to.
I'm looking for authenticity. I'm looking for people who just stand up, do the right thing, share the same values and morals that I have, and are really like there to support women. It's season 3.
What?
Welcome back to Click Clack, everybody. It has been one hell of a summer.
Yes, it has.
And I could not be more stoked to be sitting back in the studio with my boo.
Same.
And yeah, I'm just really excited to dig into all the things we're going to tackle this season together.
So am I.
So if you have not liked and subscribed to Click Clack,
you must do so.
You're missing out.
I think this first episode is going to be super unique and special for us, so I'm excited.
So one of the things that we want to do in season 3 is we really want everybody to get to know Jacki and me better. Because our friendship, our relationship is really why we started this podcast. And obviously we both love women's sports. We also love a lot of other things. But the yin and yang of this podcast is Jacki and Lauren.
Yeah.
And so with this episode, we are going to interview each other. And it's going to be hella casual.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. You know, just like really kind of peel back the layers of ourselves and just be really raw and really open.
When we are just having natural conversations, it's, you know, we're asking each other questions. We're curious about the other one. So it's like, why not just do that on this episode to start season 3? So
let's
here
go.
we are. I think looking back on our relationship, right? Like we met in the lab, we met at Nike, and you knew me as the former WNBA player. And I thought you were just another lab nerd, right? And then as we started talking, we got to know each other a bit more. We really, really vibed on beauty and fashion and skincare and all these things. And I think when we decided to do the podcast and Click Clack, we put these things together. And that's how it came together. And this is what we wanted to kind of run with, right? So I want to know a little bit more about when did you really fall in love with women's sports? Like, what was that tipping point for you? What was the turning point? What was that spark?
I think for me, there's a really big distinction between falling in love with women's sports or sports and professional sports. I remember the exact moment that it happened for me. And it wasn't during a game. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even talking to somebody about sports. It was on social media and seeing Angel Reese at the Met Gala. And watching an interview she did after the Met Gala about everybody just giving her shit, which I'm so over everybody giving Angel Reese shit. Like, I truly believe that she is a huge part of the reason that women's basketball is where it is from like a visibility perspective. Yeah. And she really shows up as her like most truest, authentic self. And that really resonated with me. And she said to the reporters, everybody was asking her questions like, well, why were you at the Met Gala and why weren't you playing basketball? And she said, women aren't one-dimensional. You have got to stop treating us that way. Mm-hmm. And that was just a huge light bulb for me, where I was like, okay, for the first time I can see these athletes beyond the court. Mm-hmm. And from there, everything kind of snowballed. And it made me even understand you in a different way.
Yeah.
And like our relationship in a different way. And I think that was really significant for me. It lit that spark, mm-hmm. or it was the spark that helped me lead to asking more questions. Figuring out like, okay, well, what sports would I want to watch?
Yeah.
And I think I naturally gravitated to the WNBA because I've always enjoyed watching NBA games, like if I had to watch sports. Mm-hmm. And now I completely see sport through a different lens because of how much I've fallen in love with professional women's sports and wanting to hear the stories of these women behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I think that was it for me. I fell in love.
And I love you like kind of reiterating that story because it's not the first time I've heard you talk about this. You've said this before, but I think it's just so important to really understand it and just have you really dive into that personally too. Because like, yes, like I think those aha moments of like the Angel Reese mm-hmm. and, you know, Caitlin Clark and like all these other like stories, like big headlines, like, do you feel like that drew you in to actually being curious about the performance and like what they're doing? And like, because I know for me, when I'm watching sports, right, I'm looking at the mechanics, like the on-court stuff. So you got brought to the game because of something that didn't have anything to do with that. But does the on-court stuff like interest you or bring a spark to you?
That moment, that spark with Angel Reese made me feel like, you know what, there actually might be a place for me to come to a game and want to know what's going on and want to ask questions. And now when I watch the game, I am, by no means could I commentate and have any kind of real expertise on like, what does that mean? What does that mean? But like, I can start putting 1+1 together. Having a team you can go to is just crucial. Like, and especially as a parent who can't travel to Seattle all the time to go watch a Storm game or go fly to Las Vegas for an Aces game, you know, it's really hard. And so this is something I can do with my kids. It's something that we're going to have an experience doing. And we had a short stint with the WNBA here in Portland, but we haven't had a lot of professional women's sports until recently. I mean, we've had the Thorns since what, like 2000 something.
Right.
But it's, you know, it's like, it's starting, right? And I think that is key, is being able to go to the games, build that fandom. And obviously we know the like concentric circles of storytelling help drive interest. Yeah. But then it's like any great product. How are you going to get somebody to actually buy it?
Right.
And that is going to the games.
Right.
And so, yes, I think step one for any new fan is you've got to be interested to even want to watch.
Yeah.
Anywhere, whether it's social media, at a game, whatever, right? Or start having conversations about it. But I definitely think that my perspective on being an athlete and like what that takes, especially knowing you personally and what you've been through, is evolving and changing the more I get into this space. And that's I think the most beautiful part about becoming a fan at any point in life is like you start walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Well, yeah, I mean, however you bring yourself into sport and then however you like maneuver and like what you start to actually love when you're there, it's like I could see that changing. And I think that it's definitely changing for you. And
yeah, and I think especially having a daughter who's going to start playing sports, we hope. But I do think that having teams here where I can start taking her to games and she can start experiencing that will open the aperture, not just for her, but for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I really look forward to.
No, I'm excited for that for you, and I'm gonna be right there teaching you certain things too.
Can't wait. Yeah. Jackie, you talked about, you know, when we first met, I kind of maybe perceived you as like, oh, a former WNBA player, you know? And I think as I've gotten to know you and really my respect for what it actually takes to become an athlete has only grown in knowing you.
Yeah.
Because you've been so raw and so real and so open about that experience. So I want to know, like, let's rewind all the way back to when you picked up a basketball for the first time and maybe even a little bit beyond that. But what was the defining moment for you when you were like, I want to play in the WNBA? That is what I'm going to do.
I know the exact moment. That's crazy that you're bringing me back to this point. I was a good basketball player growing up. I wasn't great. And I had a sister who was 1 year older than me and was better than me at everything, including basketball. And that irked me and that got under my skin. So I had to work twice as hard as her to get better than her. So anytime her and I would go outside and we would play, she'd go inside and do her homework because she was a brainiac. She was smart. She's a doctor now. And I would make sure that I'd stay after and play more. For me, I realized I was great and I was really going to be good and I was going to be in the WNBA when I was at a Sacramento Monarchs game. And me and my dad were called from the stands of 10,000 people at the time. And I had to make 6 free throws in less than a minute at the halftime show. And if I did that, then I got a $500 savings bond, a Sacramento Monarchs bag full of gear, clothes, water bottles, all these things. And I went out there and I was nervous and I was looking around. It was this little thing out there on the court and I was looking around. There's so many people and I was nervous at first. I missed my first shot and then I sunk the next 6 in a row. And I did it in 35 seconds. And I looked at my dad and I just had the biggest grin on my face. And we were walking back to my seats and all these people were saying, "You're going to be one of them someday." And it was just this surreal moment for me when I was I looked at my parents and I was I'm going to be in the WNBA someday, and that was my moment where I was okay, that's it.
And you think about that now for thousands and thousands of girls because of the access and the growth of the league. And it just gives me that's kind of where my brain went next was God, there could be so many more Jackies.
Oh,
so many more.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so special that Portland's getting a team because it's this is such an amazing city. It's now these young girls are going to be able to walk out there. They're going to have their girl bobbleheads, their women bobbleheads growing up. Just like I did. I had Tisha Pinichero's bobblehead, the Sacramento Monarchs star guard who I was obsessed with. That impact is very defining for the rest of your life and your career.
Oof. So good.
I want to go back to Angel Reese because I know that was your athlete that brought you to women's basketball, right? And really got you intrigued. Where do you stand with her today? Is that still someone that is like your icon and someone that you still follow? Like how invested are you in her off the court and on the court? I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, I like to attribute kind of that spark, that moment of really falling in love with women's sports with Angel Reese because I just remember it so vividly because I'm a huge, I love fashion, never went into fashion. I probably would have been chewed up and spit out in that industry, but I love it. It brings me joy. It's very artful. And I think that the way she shows up to the world, she's so confident and she uses clothes and fashion to tell that story about herself, which I think is really powerful. And so I would say, I'm still a huge fan of hers. And, I just think that she's really smart in how she does business and how she responds to things. I've obviously watched Chicago Sky games just to kind of watch her in the sports. But I think I also have fallen in love with
You bought her Me Bounds shirt?
I did buy her Me Bounds shirt. That's true.
Yeah.
and it's
and
really
what
cute.
Me Bounds means.
Yes,
too.
I do know what Me Bounds means.
Yeah.
She's rebounding her own
misses.
Her own misses.
I know.
I know.
I mean, you truly support her. And I feel like obviously she opened the doors for you for a lot of other athletes. And there's so many style icons out there that we've talked about that I know that because of that for you is how you start to watch them in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too that it's also opened my eyes though to really be curious about other players. And I've kind of fallen in love with Aaliyah Boston. Watching her play and just really carrying the team with so much injury in Indiana is truly amazing to me. And I saw this post that someone did where they superimposed bubble wrap around Aaliyah Boston and was but actually ... And I'm all, that's fucking genius.
And
it
really
made me laugh so hard because I'm she is so carrying this team that was so attributed to Caitlin.
Yeah.
And I'm she deserves more credit. She deserves more storytelling and you just so for me it's Angel was kind of that entry point of I see a place for myself here.
Yeah.
I can see myself in some of these women and the things that drive them and they're passionate about. But now it's open the aperture where I'm just I want to know a lot more of these women. I want to know what makes them tick. And then obviously I'm looking for authenticity. I'm looking for people who just stand up, do the right thing, share the same values and morals that I have, and are really there to support women and to be great and strive for greatness. Because that's ultimately, to me, that's the power of showing these women to my daughter. And to try and emulate these women where I wasn't an athlete, but to have that athlete mindset and to see how hard they work. I think that is true for anybody, whether you're an athlete or not. So, I would say she was kind of the entry point for me, but it's opened the aperture of my love for the game, my love for these women, and just wanting to put my energy into supporting them.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, also, too, I know you have love for other athletes, not just in women's basketball. Ilona Maher is someone huge for you.
Simone Biles,
all these amazing athletes. And I know that, you probably know a lot more about them than I do at this point because your curiosity, whatever drove you to them, I think that you, do your research and you always, are finding out more about them.
Yeah, but we've have really different lived experiences with sports. And I think for you, this is what you've lived and breathed for years, most of your life. Whereas I've had a really different career and a really different path. And I think, though, that this is the power of female consumers. Mm-hmm. Because for me, when I want something or I like something, I go fucking all in.
You really do.
I will make it happen. And I think for me, because whenever I see a product that I'm I have to have that. I have to see if I like it. And if I like it, I'm all in. I'm going to tell my friends. I'm the same thing is happening with women's sports for me, where I'm I am all in. I literally quit my job in corporate America to go all in on building this together with you and our team to help more women win through sports. And I think ultimately that's the power of what this space can do. You live in the hearts and the heads of consumers. It's not just you're building some tech product that nobody gives a shit about other than it helps me drive a more efficient life. They don't care if that company had a great quarter.
Yeah.
But the things we're doing and we're talking about can really live in the hearts and minds of people.
Yeah.
And can remind them that, like, oh my gosh, when I show up for a game, or I show my daughter an image of an athlete, or I turn on the game actively instead of putting on some bullshit on Netflix. Like, that is the power of the female consumer when she's bought in. And that's where I am today. Okay, Jack, we're going to go back into your career again. And we're going to talk maybe about a darker side of your career. I know it's hard for you to talk about, but it's really important. And you're such a poster child for supporting women athletes in injury in sports. So paint me a picture of what it was like for you. And like, get raw, get real about this. What was it like for you when you hurt your knee for the first time? Tell me, like, paint that picture for me.
Yeah. So it was what ended up being the last game of my senior year in high school. I was the number one player in the country at the time. I had verbally committed to UConn, University of Connecticut, about, I want to say 8 months prior to that. Ended up decommitting there and chose to go to USC. But when I say I was at like the top of the top, where you could be in at that point in my life. We were playing El Camino at Galt High School. It was like the section playoffs. 2 years prior, we had won state championships 2 years consecutively before that, so we were expected to win the state championship. This year was also a few weeks before the McDonald's All-American game. And then that next year, I would have been going into my first year at USC as the number one player in the country in my class. And we also had the number one class in the country going into USC as well. I mean, it was devastating. The whole gym got silent when I went down because I screamed. And it was also an unfortunate like circumstance because I was kind of shoved in the back by another player that ended up hyperextending my knee. I knew something really like bad happened because like, you know, you get injured when you're young and you get hurt and you get back up and you can kind of dust it off and keep going. But I knew something was like actually structurally wrong. So when I fell and I went down, it was like hard for me to put any pressure on it. And I was, you know, screaming, crying. And again, like, it was just a horrible, horrible situation. My mom and dad came running down. Like, they're not really they're not those type of parents that are like very like, my dad goes and watches my games up in the corner by himself. He doesn't have anyone around him. He's just there by himself. And then my mom's like kind of in the mix, but like they came running down. Then I went in the back in the locker room and the team finished out the game. We ended up losing, and that was the last game of my high school career. And that moment really changed the trajectory of my career for good. Is unfortunate. It was.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's a really emotional topic for you to talk about. Being an athlete, from just hearing your stories, talking to other athletes, like, it's a high risk, high reward pathway, and it takes bold people to become an athlete and choose that path. And I think, you know, obviously we've talked about it season over season, how you've transitioned your career. Not only did you play an exceptionally well across the 10 years you played in this overseas and in the W, with all of that, you know, with everything you dealt with mentally and physically with that injury. But I think being able to be raw and open about what it feels like, as hard as I'm sure it is for you, can help a lot of people.
Yeah. No, for sure. I ended up re-injuring myself 4 more times. So I had, as everyone knows, I've said it a million times, 5 ACL tears in total. So I think that my story and that just label is made me this poster child for this injury. And I think I know a lot of people that I've impacted in a positive way because of it. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten messages and emails and DMs and about people hearing about my story, learning about my story, and that inspiring them to continue to keep going. And you know, and I would actually take time to talk to younger kids on the phone and talk to, you know, parents about how I can help their child or whatever it was. So I know that there was something greater and something bigger in what it was. You know, it was unfortunate, but like there was also some really good that came out of it. And I always tell myself, I'm like, I was the right person for this to happen to, you know, because I have the patience, I have the compassion, I have the empathy, and, you know, I feel like any person that I was able to speak to, I gave them everything that I could. So
There's always light in darkness.
mm-hmm.
And how people respond to darkness with light, in my opinion, is truly the definition of their character. And I think you have time, as long as I've known you, what, have we known each other almost 3 years now?
God, has it been 3
It's
years?
fucking wild.
Fastest 3 years of my life.
I know, that's wild. But as long as I've known you, I feel like, and I don't want to speak for you here, but what I observe is that darkness, you used that to channel light and to get through it and to keep growing from it. And that, again, like I always like to say with our show, our goal is to take sports as a sort of conduit or a metaphor for life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what you accomplished is a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
For anybody that's facing adversity or has something that happens to them, and how do you bring in the light?
Right.
Because otherwise you're just going to live in the dark. So I just really appreciate you sharing that story always.
I know throughout past episodes we've talked about all of our favorite athletes and, you know, just like why we love them and all these things, but there's so many good ones to choose from.
I know.
So I am so curious, who are your top 3 athletes of any sport and why?
I would say, you know, again, I want to give flowers to women at every level of sports because I think we often tend to gravitate to the women that get the most exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to try and pick somebody who has a lot of exposure and somebody who doesn't,
Nice.
to really like give some flowers. So I want to start with Simone Biles. She is so authentically her in the way she shows up to the world, and she listens to her body and to her mind.
Yeah.
And I think for, you know, you read time and time again athletes that tell these stories about being pushed too hard, being pushed to the brink, burning out. And what she's been able to accomplish, you know, going from the different Olympics to Olympics, whether it was, you know, her pulling out for mental health reasons, then coming back and winning gold. Like, I think, again, bringing it back to the metaphor of life, if you don't actually listen to your body, you're never going to win.
Yeah.
And I think for too long, athletes have been, you know, had to be put in this box where it's like, if you don't perform, you're out.
Yeah, I mean, it's still like that too. Like, athletes are not listening to what they need. Like, that is just like, we're not taught to do that. We have to push through. We have to fight through it. And that, like, we've talked about this so many times, and it's very mentally taxing on any player and it can ruin your career. But again, like, I could not agree with that answer of Simone Biles. Like, I think she's iconic, like you said, and she's just been such a great role model and inspiration for so many younger athletes because, like, now maybe they'll listen to themselves or when they need a break.
Absolutely. And I think for me, the mental health aspect of sport is really particularly fascinating to me. And I think she has become a bit of a face for really breaking the mold on listening to your mental health as much as your physical health.
For sure.
Which is so important in sports, and it's going to really change a lot of lives. And in fact, Simone Biles inspired me to go and seek therapy when I was really struggling with mental health because of what she did at the Olympics. And I feel like if you know,
Did she really?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it just, and really to like more focus on my mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, that was a gift that she gave me beyond just being able to watch her perform and entertain me.
That's,
and like,
that's huge, Lauren. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was a big thing. And, you know, I haven't been as consistent with therapy as I would like to, but that was a really big inflection point for me because I'd never really seen a therapist before. And I was going through it, you know, after COVID. I went on antidepressants. I'm off them now. And so she just really inspires me from every front, from performance to just what it is to be a woman and listen to your body and your mind.
Yeah, damn, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I would say Simone.
That's only one. We have 2 more.
I know, fuck. I gotta shorten my answers too. But yeah, I would say the second one, who's very prolific, but I'm gonna talk about her. We talk about Ilona Maher all the time. But Ilona, to me, you know, for the first time I've actually watched rugby. Like, I watched some of the Rugby World Cup, and it's never been a sport I even thought would be remotely on my radar. And she's a big reason why.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just the truth. It is. But it's also opened my eyes to other people in rugby. Like, I interviewed a local women's rugby coach here because I was just generally curious. Like, what are aspects of the game I should know about?
Yeah.
And I think those are the conversations, again, as we talk about that marketing funnel, it always takes like a big face or a big message to pull someone in.
Right.
And she did that for me. And I just love the way she shows up. She just seems like someone I'd like want to go to coffee with.
Yeah.
Or I'd want to like, just listen to and or be friends with. And I think that level of relatability is so important in sports because otherwise you're going to alienate a lot of people, a lot of women who need that sense of relatability and a feeling of like, oh, she's like me. If you can't see her, you can't be her.
Right.
That to be part of the game. So I would definitely say Ilona is number 2.
Love that.
Number 3. So I've been kind of obsessing women's softball and women's professional baseball. So there's a new women's professional baseball league that's coming next year. And just the history of women's baseball in this country is fascinating. Would highly recommend people go do a little research on it. It actually started in 1954 and then like dissolved, and now it's coming back. And actually the woman who was the first, I believe she was the first MLB coach as a female, is behind starting this league, which I think is really cool.
Is the league tied to the MLB?
No, no. It's separate from that. I mean, who knows how they're gonna play together, but pun intended. But
and it's based in the U.S.
Yep, it's called the Women's Professional Baseball League.
Nice.
Lots of acronyms coming in out now with these new leagues. But I have been so captivated by Kelsie Whitmore's story. So she's the first woman to play for the Savannah Bananas, which is an offshoot of professional men's baseball. She just is so prolific in baseball and softball. And I just have been so captivated by her. And, she does have a big following and a big audience, but I don't think she has anywhere near the mass awareness of like a Simone Biles or an Ilona Maher. But she is really something else. And to watch her play, I've watched her pitch a bunch of times. She's really making a mark in the world of baseball and softball.
What's her story? Like, what drives you to her?
I think, she's really authentic in how she talks about equity for women in baseball and softball. And I feel like for me, I've always been really drawn to people that try and rebel and challenge the status quo of just how things have always been. And she's really strong. She's like really strong and really beautiful. And not that she has to be beautiful, but like, I think the combination of seeing that strong girl and also like a girl who shows up with confidence is really powerful for me. And now I'm seeing so many of these women athletes that just look strong, and that strong is beautiful, and it's going to change the way that girls see themselves fundamentally. And I think she, for me, her kind of stance on equity in sports, I'm really excited to see where her career goes and what happens with these emerging leagues for softball and for baseball for women.
I'm going to pay attention to her.
Jack, so I feel like we've kind of gone through different parts of your journey in basketball. Now let's talk about what life after basketball. And I want to understand from you, what was it like knowing your basketball career was ending? And what were the feelings and emotions that went through your head? And what when you were like, what the fuck am I going to do next?
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
That was such a scary time in my life. With basketball, like, you finish one team, right? You finish one contract, and then you have to always worry about, like, what's my next contract, right? So, like, that feeling of, like, uncertainty isn't, like, super, super new, because, like, everything was always, like, kind of a question mark, like, oh, what country am I going to play in next season? Or, what WNBA team am I going to play in this season? I guess I was kind of used to that, but what I was not used to was not playing basketball, right? That was the biggest difference. So for me, I felt like my entire life was tied to the game, and my identity was Jacki, the basketball player. It was my biggest passion in my life. It's the only thing that made me happy to that extent. And I genuinely had no clue how it was going to be for me without playing anymore. And I was so scared because, like, yes, I knew that I could coach and I could become a trainer. These are things I knew I could do and figure out, but I didn't want those things. I did not want to be a coach. I did not want to be a trainer. I didn't want to do those things. I didn't have a passion for that. I didn't know what I was going to do, okay? I was in a position where I was forced to quit, and I had to quit because my knee would not allow me to play basketball anymore. So, like, I was telling myself, okay, like, I have to make this decision, and I have to make it publicly, because if I don't make it publicly, it's not going to be real. So the first step for me was telling my parents, and that broke my heart. Like, that was one of the hardest things I had to do. I remember we were in Malibu, and we were walking on the beach, and I just, in a very awkward, kind of casual way, ended up telling them, and then just broke down in tears. And then both my parents, like, not my dad, I've only seen my dad cry twice, but my mom started, she broke down in tears too. And they were just ensuring me and consoling me and just telling me everything was going to be okay, where, you know, you're at some point it was going to have to happen, and it's okay, and you're going to be fine, and you're going to be great at anything you do, and this and that. But we were just like, I was just like, well, what is that? What am I going to be great at next? What's going to make me happy, you know? And then it was for me publicly putting a post out on Instagram, which I have pinned still to this day. It's like, you know, that it was the day that I made that like verbal announcement that I'm done with basketball. And I knew once I did that, I wasn't going to turn back and like try and do something crazy and try and like, you know, continue to play. Once I did that, literally within 2 hours, I got a DM from the head coach for the New York Liberty, Walt Hopkins. And he slid in my DMs and he was like, hey, what are you doing next? What's your next step? And I was like, what do you mean what's my next step? I have no idea. I was like, I literally am still in tears. Like, I just posted this post, you know? And he was like, I want you to come coach with me. And I was like, whoa. It didn't even cross my mind that that I could have an opportunity to coach in the WNBA. That wasn't like a thought for me. I knew college coaching, easy, like, and that's you're paid well in the NCAA. You're paid well as a college coach. So it wasn't like I was afraid about like how I was gonna make money, you know. But I just didn't want that grind. It's like year round. You're constantly recruiting. It was all these things, right? But the WNBA season is short. It's only 5 months out of the year. So, and I didn't even fathom the thought of being a coach at that level. So when he told me that, and it was in New York, I was like, this could be a really good transition for me to not feel the weight of like being removed as a player so heavily, right? Because I'll still be in the game. I'll still be around, you know, my peers and players. I'll still be right in the mix and in the forefront of it all. So maybe it won't feel as heavy, right? So I was like, okay, I don't want to coach, but I'm going to do it. So I ended up telling Walt that I will do it. And so I didn't really have a long period of time, not even like more than a few days of like this uncertainty of like what's next, right? So I was so fortunate in that sense of like I jumped right into New York coaching, and I was thrown in the fire that year. He tasked me with 6 scouts. So as a first year coach that had never done any scouting reports or like had to put film together on other teams, it was so stressful, and it was highly, highly stressful for me. And I was presenting to my peers who were my teammates the years before. So it was such a weird place to be, because I'm like, I don't want to be called coach. Like, I'm not your coach. I'm like, y'all are my homies, you know? Like, we're friends. You're my teammates. But it was just this weird position to be in. I would advise other like former players to like wait a year or two before they jump into that.
Don't wait 2 days.
No, yeah, don't wait 2 days. It's awkward, you know, but like I got the hang of it. But again, like I don't feel like I ever had to sit with that feeling of like I don't have a job, I don't know what I'm going to do, because as I was coaching for the Liberty, I was the same time applying for the role at Nike in the WIN program. And I had known about the WIN program for several years. I just didn't know the right time for me to actually go for it and do it, because I didn't know if I still wanted to play, and I was still able to play. So I was interviewing for Nike during that time, and I got accepted into the WIN program. So I had told everyone at New York that I was going to, you know, move to Portland. I'm not going to be back the following year, and I'm going to do Nike. So I was locked in at Nike for 2 years for sure under the WIN program. I was always very, very lucky and fortunate to just have things that like came up. The WIN program really just is, I mean, I can speak so highly about it, but it's really what I think made my transition super special. Like I give it to that program, because I never like experienced what it was like to do anything outside of basketball, and I was learning all these different things, met so many amazing people, hence you, who I'm sitting right next to, and that just catapulted, I think, a lot for me, and it also helped me so much in my next role, you know, in the sports agency side.
I would say the moral of the story is if you're an athlete at any level, right?
Yeah.
But especially if you're a professional athlete, there is a road for you beyond your sport.
I mean, I love to say that there is, but we're lacking a lot of like roads to life after sport. Like I think that I was very, very lucky and very fortunate. And I think there's a lot of athletes out there that struggle with this. I'm just, I'm lucky. And I know tons of athletes, pro, college, that have not been fulfilled or not been able to figure out that next step.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, though, my point is there's a level of ingenuity and drive that you inherently build when you're
For sure.
when you're playing sports, and that's just there.
Yeah.
It's going to be there for you forever.
Yeah.
And so I think the definition of athlete is also very much defined by the skills and the tools that you build when you're actually pursuing something really hard.
Yeah.
When you're putting your body through something that's really hard.
Yeah.
Will I ever understand what you went through as a professional player? Absolutely not. I would never even try to say I could understand. But I think that we share a lot in common as far as being able to do hard shit. And I think for any athlete that is trying to figure out what path is right for them, it's all about test and trial. I think probably the scarier thing is they're later on in their life. Whereas like for me in my early 20s when I'm like bouncing and figuring out what kind of job I wanted more in corporate, I got to test out a lot of things, and then that helped me kind of get to this next phase of life. But I can tell you too, for your everyday corporate girly, most people in corporate America are not happy.
Yeah.
That's a broad statement, but it's also
a
lived experience.
Right.
And I think life always looks easier from the outside than what actually people are experiencing. So I think for me, it's about being open, having these conversations, hearing people's struggles, and helping.
Yeah.
Like, how do we help athletes feel like there's more of a place for them in jobs and in industry? Because we're human beings. We can do a lot of hard shit. We can learn things. And I think that, to me, is the moral of your story. Is like, yes, you were lucky in some ways. But also, Jackie, you've taken every opportunity and, like, built on it.
Yeah.
Even doing this with me, founding Click Clack. You've built on something that you never thought you would do.
Yeah.
And then look at where we are now.
Yeah.
And where we're going to go.
For sure. I just think, like, anytime you put yourself in uncomfortable, situations, you always come out better.
100%.
And, like, I was always scared. I was so scared to do the Nike thing, and I'm so glad I did it,
In your mind, 5 to 10 years from now, what does the landscape of women's sports look like? What do you want to see happen?
For me, I would love to see more women's sports tied to men's leagues. So, for example, I'd love to see a women's MLB, WMLB. I'd love to see WNFL, all these massive sports leagues. I'd love to see more on the women's side, first and foremost. I think that more professional leagues, like serious ones, big ones that are tied to the men's leagues, is what's really going to set women up in a really, really massive way. What I can also see happening in the next 5 to 10 years is just, obviously everything is on the up and up right now. Everything is getting better. It's not moving at a pace that we might necessarily want it to be, but it is evolving. And I do think in 5 to 10 years, we're going to look back and we're going to be in such a different place. And I think with more resources and pay, obviously pay for women is going to continue to get better. And with higher pay, more women are going to be able to invest in their bodies, and they're going to be able to take those breaks that they need. And in that off season, they're going to be able to put those resources in their body. So these women are going to have longer careers too. So we're going to start seeing players being able to play professional and at such high levels at 40 and 45 maybe is my prediction and what I think. I also think too, we're going to see less women dropping out of sports because there's just going to be more opportunities and more resources, and there's going to be more attention on mental health too. So there's going to, me, when I was growing up, when I was playing sports, I didn't have access to mental health, experts. So I think we're going to have more people that are in that space too, that are going to be able to help these young girls figure out, what's going on and what's happening with them and keep them in sport. So I just see a world in 5 to 10 years where we're going to just have just a ton of more resources.
That was a damn good answer.
Thanks, girlfriend.
Preach.
And I know you got some juicy answers coming up,
Preach.
too.
I'm going to talk more about, like, the macro perspective. I would love to walk into any restaurant, any place where there's a TV, and see women's sports playing. not just women's sports bars, which are obviously a huge part of the infrastructure of growing viewership and opportunity, but I would love to see that. I think that's when you've really reached a level of access that will change the world and change things for women.
Couldn't agree more.
And in addition to that, I would like to see sports for women being talked about in more industries where there maybe historically hasn't been a presence for sports or women to talk about sports there. We're starting to see that happen in industries like beauty and fashion, food and bev, like all of these industries that are predominantly driven by female consumers in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But I still feel like today it's more of a marketing play and it isn't a product play.
Yeah.
I want to see a world where companies are not just investing in leagues, teams, and athletes from a marketing perspective, but actually putting their money where their mouth is and making products for women that they need. Products for menstrual cycles, products for sports bras. And we know we have companies that do a lot of that today, but like it hasn't really reached outside of sport in a way that I think can influence women at like that big macro level.
Yeah.
That will ultimately keep girls in sports. And so I would love to see that be a lot more prolific across the industry space where it's not just marketing.
Yeah.
It's not just saying, oh, we hired, Cam Brink to be the face of X.
Yeah.
It's saying, oh, hey, Cam, we want you to sit in on this with this R&D meeting because we're going to create a new line of tampons that actually help you better understand menstrual cycles when you're playing sports and you're putting this much on your body. Again, I think there's places where this is happening. We're seeing tampon brands as an example start that do focus on performance, but I don't want to just see marketing partnerships. I want to see these brands walk the walk.
Damn, girl.
So
That's what's up.
that's what I want to see. And finally, I would say I want to just echo what you said about equity and pay because the conversation around women's equity and pay goes even beyond sports, way, way beyond sports. We know that women, I believe, still make 80 cents to the dollar that men make in across all industries on average. I want to keep fighting for equity and pay because I fundamentally believe if you put more wealth in women's pockets, the world will be better. I fundamentally believe that. And if sport can be a place where that happens, like I'm fucking here for that. Like that's why I'm putting my time and energy in this space because one, it helps women achieve greatness.
Yeah.
But also, I always say this, we have to look at it like a business. That's how this world operates. And if women have more wealth, we are going to see women win. We are going to see women in more boardrooms. We might even see a female president someday.
Yeah.
Which is my dream.
Yep.
I want that before I die. I want my daughter to see a female president. So I think that's the power of sport, and that's what women's sports can do for the future.
Boom.
Man, it felt so good, Jack, just to talk today.
I'm glad to be back with you, and I love our episodes together.
And I will say, every time I ask you a question or we talk, I learn something new about you. Even if it's a topic we've already talked about at length, that's the power of these conversations and in our relationship is like, it really challenges people to go deeper than the surface. And that's what I would love to see more people do in their relationships, is to go deeper.
For sure. I learned something about you today, too, and that was that Simone Biles inspired you to go to therapy. I didn't know that. I think that's super powerful.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, she's amazing. But this is going to be quite a season, you guys. There's so much coming up. And we just love you all so much, for listening and supporting us. So many of people that follow us are in our communities and are just show up for us. And we can't wait to see what is going to happen this season.
Yeah, same. I'm super excited for everything.
So your call to action, people, from this interview is go ask a question that you've never asked to someone in your life that you love. Homework for our audience.
So good. Are we going to start doing that? Homework for our audience?
We might. But anyways, Jack's getting hungry as always, so we got to go, y'all. Love you, boo.
Love you too. Thank you, everyone.